Varya, Kelley, Vice Chair of Pennsylvania Film Industry Association. And we have an amazing guest here today, Sarayu Blue. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here.
I'm really excited. You have a very inspiring story. You have worked on some fantastic TV shows that I personally love. And as soon as I posted that we're having you, I had so many like, oh my God, I love her. So I'm really excited. And I feel bad. It's a really famous one, but yes. Yes, I'd love to hear more about that one. And of course, and Medical Police, Unicorn.
Yeah.
But I don't want to take away from all the amazing stories that you have for us. So could you please start by telling us how you got started in the industry?
Yeah, it was kind of nutty. I just started acting at like 15, like so many of us, right? I was in my high school musical, Pippin, and just was like, oh, I found it. I found what I'm supposed to do with my life. Mm-hmm. And of course, my parents were like, oh no, this is just not ideal. But I really just was adamant about it. And as luck would have it, was able to keep going with it. So after high school, I went to college and, I did just general bachelor's degree, but I focused on theater. That was my major. And then got my master's degree at ACT in San Francisco and came out to LA and really just lucked into a really great agent and manager from our showcase. Mm-hmm. And it's worth acknowledging that between that time, between undergrad and graduate school, I actually was in LA for a little bit and just wasn't quite getting where I wanted to get to career-wise, and decided to go to grad school, and then came out of grad school with the showcase, and that's how I got my agent and manager. So it was kind of, I always call it was a zigzaggy journey, like it is for all of us, right? It was a zigzaggy journey.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think your formal university education prepared you and gave you advantage over those who might have not decided to go the formal way? And also, what were some of your favorite courses in the university that you remember the most when you're on set?
Do you see the huge grin on my face? I loved school. I loved it so much. I love training. I love acting. That's it, right? I love acting. Mm-hmm. I think, if I'm being really honest, I'm not totally sure it gave me an advantage. Now, I know that's a weird thing to say. It did, right? We had a showcase and I was able to get a great agent and manager out of it. That really began my journey out here in LA and TV and film, and theater. However, it's obviously not necessary. Not everyone has to go to school to have that journey. Our industry is one that is a bit arbitrary, and that is both frustrating and liberating. Mm-hmm. It's frustrating because there's no prescription that says if you do this, this, and this, you'll get there. But it's liberating in that you don't have to do this, this, and this to get there. So it was what worked for me. I think the advantage was that out of that showcase, I was able to get some good representation who really believed in me and fought for me. Mm-hmm. But there are so many brilliant actors that didn't get that representation. So I do think there are lots of ways into the industry to get there. Mm-hmm. And as far as classes that I loved, I always loved the acting classes. Like even in when I was doing my theater major, sure, there was dramaturgy and, all the breakdowns of classes of theater history, which is great. It's important and it matters. But where my heart was always going to be was with acting classes and my acting teachers. And I also really loved movement. I'm a really physical, kinesthetic person. So I like things that help me get in my body and take me out of my head. That just helps me connect with myself better. So any classes that geared me in that direction were the ones where I really flourished.
Yeah. Do you think that actors who are already in the field, do you think they should continue education and professional development, or do you think that they are just improving their skill on set? And for the aspiring actors who are not going through the formal training, what are some ways to work and improve their craft?
To keep things moving. Mm-hmm. I think training is always valuable in the sense of it's keeping those muscles working, right? I mean, I think the truth is even a lot of TV acting doesn't necessarily stretch you and grow you the way classes can. A lot of times in classes, you're playing roles that you might not get cast as, but they're making you better. It's the same thing with singing. You know, I think people singing or any musical instrument, you'll do the classical training so you know the structure and the technique to be able to play whatever the hell you want, right? And I think that there is a freedom it affords you to get better and more comfortable in yourself and trusting your instincts and listening and responding, those really basic tenets of being good at what we do. And I don't think it's imperative. You know, I loved school. I loved it so much. And I loved getting information and growing and playing and just sort of having a space to fail. I think that's what I love the most about acting class is you get to just fail, you know, without, it doesn't matter. You don't get fired from acting class. You know, you could have a bad day and you may beat yourself up over it, but you will get better because you failed. And so I do think it's valuable. I don't think it's imperative. And the one thing I, in fact, shy away from with classes is I think actors sometimes, we look for someone to tell us how to do everything and we stop trusting our own instincts, right? That sort of guru mentality. And I think that is where it becomes a crutch. So I think as long as class and training are a place where you're playing and getting connected with your own instincts and growing, it's wonderful. I think where it gets a little bit murky is when you cannot survive without it. You don't trust yourself. You don't know how to do it on your own. Because my guess is most actors have great instincts and know what is right. And if we're getting closer to that, we're usually becoming better storytellers.
Mm-hmm. And which acting techniques, out of the many that you've learned about in the university, which ones do you relate to the most? Which ones influence you the most?
I'm just having so much fun right now.
I'm glad to hear that.
Geek out like this very often anymore. Like, it's just in TV and stuff, people don't tend to talk about this stuff. And I'm such a theater girl, so this is just like making me.
Well, we're learning from you. This is fantastic. So.
For me personally, I really connected with Meisner. Mm-hmm. And again, I think what I liked about my Meisner teacher was very much, her name was Trish Hawkins, and she was a brilliant actress. And she just was one of those people who has always stuck with me. She really helped me get connected to the truth and telling the truth and getting out of my head and just being present and in the circumstances, in the world. And I think I also always liked Grotowski. Again, the physical, the kinesthetic. I know a lot of people love Stanislavski, and I did a lot of Stanislavski training. And for me, I started doing the math too much. I got too in my head. And I think that it's all important. I like that I know it all because different roles require different methods, to be honest, for me. And there are times where I have to do the math a little bit more. And there are times where I have to do the beats and the super objectives. And then there are other times where for me, it's more freeing to use a physical approach or ultimately they're all kind of getting you to the same place. It's just different people gravitate towards different ways in.
Sure. You mentioned being a theater girl.
Yes.
Yes. And I think the biggest fear of theater is forgetting lines, messing up on the stage because there's no cuts, reshoot, reset, back to one. There's no back to one.
There's no back to one.
Yes. So what are your secrets to not forgetting the line, or if you are, getting out of it so nobody knows?
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's funny because I feel like in theater, it's actually so much easier because you get 4 to 6 weeks to rehearse. Usually. I mean, maybe sometimes it's less depending on the circumstances, but often what comes along with theater is rehearsal. And for me, the more I'm running it and the more it's getting into my body, the better I know it. I think TV and film are a little more challenging because it's faster. It can change in the moment. A lot of times, you know, you think you get all these takes, but a lot of times if you're not one of the lead people on set, you don't necessarily feel comfortable asking for another take. So to me, you know, there's also that aspect. And I guess for me, the memorization really comes the more I run it. So my trick, I'm not sure if it's a trick, but my method for me is a lot of times if I'm going to an audition or something, I like to run lines while I'm driving to the audition because it means that I know it so well, nothing can throw me, right? I'm not looking at the pages. It's just in there. I can do it no matter what. And I think that for me is a good. The other thing I like to do to memorize is run it with someone. I need to hear the lines and be able to respond to them. Otherwise, I'm just learning my lines, and that doesn't get it in my body. That's just, again, that's sort of like the math of it. I like to feel it and be responding to what I was saying or what I'm hearing.
Do you have any good memorization techniques and actual process that helps you?
Not really, other than just running it a few times. I'm lucky in that memorization comes pretty quickly to me. Yeah. So, but running it is really running it with my poor husband, who never signed on for this. He has run so many auditions with me. And, you know, before I met my husband, I used to call my best friend and she, I'd be driving to my auditions and she'd have to run these lines with me. And again, it's just, for me, it's hearing them, and the more I'm running them, the better. I remember I had an acting teacher who used to always say, if you run them before you go to bed and then in the morning again, like it just really, but for me, it's about getting it in my body. You know, I think that's the main thing. The more my whole body knows those lines, the better chance I have of not being able to be thrown.
Good. So over preparation. Good.
Yeah, it's always that balance though, right? It's over preparation so that you can be free.
Yeah.
I mean, because you don't want to be preparing so much that you're restricted.
Yeah.
It doesn't, if it has to be perfect, it's too much. It has to be free. That's the key. What do you do to set yourself up to be free?
Wow. The scary part, the auditions. Well, it is. It's and as much as actors say, and directors especially, you have to enjoy the auditions. You know, it's part of the job.
Right. Did you see eye roll? I can't even. It's like a Pavlovian response to those words.
It's terrifying. It's true. It's scary. Yeah. So how do you deal with this terror? How do you deal with disappointment? Because unfortunately, rejection is part of this audition process, and it could be for the silliest reasons, but it is part of it. And how do you make yourself stand out in that room and how do you make yourself remember it that, that's the one?
I think, well, let me go back to the word rejection really.
Yes.
I think one of the things that's really empowering as an actor is if you can free yourself from the idea of rejection. And I know that's big, but what I'm saying is all we can do is what we can do. So for me, what I really started to do was just say, okay, if I'm prepared and go in there and do everything I can do and do my best, the rest is out of my hands. Sometimes you nail an audition and you walk out of that room and think, I felt it. I know I felt it. And you still don't get it. And sometimes you walk into a room and go, oh my gosh, I don't know what I did in that room. That was the worst thing I've ever done. And they go, no, you're still the one. And the reality is there's so much that's out of our hands that when we start to make peace with that aspect of it and start to just go, okay, it's not so much rejection. It's not personal, ultimately. It feels personal because we love what we do so much and it's vulnerable and we've shared something. But the truth is, there are so many elements that go into casting that you can't even imagine. And so when we can let go of taking it personally and just do our part, the truth is we become somewhat unstoppable because we're not so dependent on them to give us our value. And I think in terms of being memorable, this is going to sound so reductive, but there's not much you can do other than just be good.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but it's true. And being good doesn't mean getting it word perfect. Being good doesn't mean wearing the perfect shirt or wearing your hair right, or, you know, all of that factors in. But that factors in to make you feel like you can go in and really do great work in that room. And that's ultimately the only thing that matters, is how can you set yourself up to feel fantastic? Mm-hmm. I feel better when I'm wearing something that makes me feel like the character I'm reading for. It doesn't have to be like, oh, it's a nerd, I'm putting on glasses. It doesn't have to be specific, but it could be something just simple like, oh, this character, I feel like she might like yellow, so maybe I'm going to wear a yellow top. I say that because I'm wearing yellow. But, you know, you can do whatever you need to do to make sure that you can do a good job, but you don't have to do anything other than be yourself. And usually that authenticity and that good work are the most memorable things. And just because you didn't get the job doesn't mean you weren't memorable. Mm-hmm. You know, they may say, oh, they were great, they weren't right for this one, and call you in 2 weeks later for a different role. So it's a way to free yourself so you can see the bigger picture and give yourself the space to just keep going.
Yeah, thank you. How do you move from guest star roles to supporting characters to lead characters? How do you cross that bridge from this?
$1 million question. The $1 million question.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, that one is a little bit nebulous, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I think I can speak to my journey specifically because I do think it's so random. Look, there's people who sit in a Starbucks cafe and, you know, some fancy, you know, Coppola walks in and says, oh, hey, are you an actor? And the next thing you know, it's like, there's your movie. So look, there's all sorts of randomness to it. But ultimately, that was not my journey. My journey was, you know, was out here. I had been, you know, not doing great, went to graduate school. In fact, started at one graduate school. It wasn't the right fit. Restarted at another. Mm-hmm. Then came out here. Then got the agent, the manager, and, you know, I booked a few co-stars, which are sort of under 5. That's what they call them. They're just sort of like the small, but technically important characters, right? To tell the story, the functional. And I booked a few of those and was really excited. And then I wanted to book bigger stuff. And what they started doing, I talked to my reps and said, how do we get to that next level? And they said, okay, we're going to try to start submitting you. So they start submitting you for the bigger stuff. And if you can book that stuff, you can start building between the co-stars and the guest stars. You start building the demo. You start building the tape that shows, right? The more you go in these rooms and book these jobs, the more you have material. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, even if you don't book the jobs, the more you read for casting directors in these guest starring roles, which tend to be a little bit bigger, you're able to show them that you're capable, right? Now, then you can start to say, okay, I've booked a few guest stars. I'm not going to read for co-stars anymore. You can do whatever you want, is what I'm saying. You can set these boundaries. Now, the other side of that is some of the auditions might trim down. Yeah. They might say, well, we see you more in these roles and we don't see you in these guest star roles. So that meant extra bartending shifts for me, extra table waiting shifts for me, extra ways to support my income until I could start to get seen at that level. Mm-hmm. Also, there are plenty of actors I know who don't need to be seen at that level. You can live a really good life on, you know, co-star roles, commercials, a one-day guest. You can live a great life, frankly, you know, and there's so much programming out there now that it actually is really feasible. I think it just depends on what's important to you, and how have you set yourself up to make that possible? Because you don't want to be in a situation where you're not paying your rent.
Sure. Yeah.
There's a nuts and bolts aspect, and that's why I table waited and bartended and, you know, babysat and did all the millions of other jobs I did for as long as I did, because that was the only way to navigate getting in. And then ultimately, you know, I was able to get seen in serious regular roles and, you know, get to that level, but it did take a little while.
Sure. I mean, it does take a lot of dedication and hard work to get there. So,
and I think it depends on your sort of what really matters to you. You know, I didn't have children. It made it easier for me. You know, there were things about my life. I was single. I was living in a small apartment that the rent was pretty manageable. You know, I was living very within my means at that point. So it wasn't impossible for me to take those risks. Those risks, you know, it's calculated. You have to decide what feels right for you and go from there.
Sure. I have another $1 million question for you. Agents and managers. And I know at some point actors are thinking, oh, I hope they choose me. But when you get to a certain level, you have to now choose them. And making that right decision could be a challenge. So how do you select an agent and a manager? What kind of skill set, personality traits? What do you look for to make the right decision?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think for me, it was very much a gut call, which I say that because that's kind of all I trust my gut more than just about anything. But it's also, you know, there are certain questions you can ask when you're in those meetings, and you can get a sense of how invested they are in you. You know, there's a lot of agents who can come across excited at the start, and it can feel kind of like, it can feel really exciting. It feels great, but it also can feel a little bit in your gut like smoke and mirrors. And then there are agents who I think are really invested in you and what you bring to the table and developing you. And I think when you're first signing with agents and managers for the first time and you don't have maybe a ton of tape or experience or connections, you need someone who's going to really develop you. So when I went with the team that I went with, they loved theater actors. They were smaller scale, kind of like a mid-size, I guess they call them boutique agencies. And there were 3 agents there who I could really go to and say, hey, I'm checking in, what's going on? Sometimes you get responses, sometimes you don't. That's a really frustrating feeling. I think it's really important, and this is where I really think the trusting your gut factors in. It's really important to be able to advocate for yourself. And, you know, people will say this all the time, your agents work for you, you don't work for them. Well, that's really hard to feel that dynamic when you're coming out for the first time into the industry and you don't have the reel and the resume, right? It's very hard to have that strength within you. I think if you can find ways to check in with yourself and say, wow, this person is not invested in me in the way I thought they would be. Or they are, but I just have to make peace with the fact that I'm not going to get feedback after every audition. You know, there's 2 sides to this. Yeah. But if you can find that space to be able to say, and then say, oh, I think they're not repping me well, you have to be able to have that conversation. You have to find a way to, you know, screw the courage to the sticking place and say, I haven't heard from you. I don't feel like I'm being advocated for. And if you don't feel invested in me anymore, I think it's time we address that. Because it's not going to behoove you to sit around and be half repped by someone. And that is a place of honesty that it's really important to find over and over again in our careers. Because when we can have the courage to be honest with ourselves, we can have it to be honest with others. And it helps teach people how we deserve to be treated. And it teaches us what we deserve. And it helps us advocate for ourselves relentlessly, which is what we're always going to have to do as actors. Always. Everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. This is a serious issue that many aspiring actors are going through. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, thank you. No, I get it. It's a very the nuts and bolts of how to navigate this industry are always the sort of challenging parts.
Are there any ways that maybe like some emotional tools that help you get into character on set when you are on the film set?
on film set. That changes a lot for me. Really, really changes a lot. But music is big for me. So a lot of times I have a song that really resonates for the character. I like space. I like quiet. I don't like to be around. Some actors can be like super social and then boom, go into it. I'm not that facile. I tend to need space to sort of go into my world, into my daydream, into my whatever land. And so headphones really help for me because people know not to talk to me. You know, it's sort of like my way to say I'm just in my world right now. Not to talk to me, but you know what I'm saying? Like it's a signal that like you're in your thing. Sets can be tough though, because a lot of times you just have to be ready to go, you know, like there's a lot of commotion happening. People are checking lights and this and that. And so I've really learned how to be a little bit more flexible on those things and just use the connection that is within me in that moment and go from there. But it's challenging sometimes.
Yeah. It just, like you said, with theater, you're immersed in that character and you're going through that character throughout. But in film, in and out, and many times you go through that breakup scene many times in a row.
Well, and one of the things I really learned how to do, and again, I say learned because you're not, very rarely are you told to take up space. I really learned how to advocate for myself and say, hi, I'd like another take, please.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a time and space, you know. I didn't say that when I was pharmacist number 1. But, you know, if it's a scene where I feel like it could really be valuable for me and for the story, I will say, do you mind if we do another take, you know? And it can be scary to ask for that. Sometimes you just get huffed at. And you know what? It's your performance. It's your performance.
Yes.
Absolutely. It's your face and that's your reel. So it's important to learn how to advocate for yourself.
Now we're going to talk about emotions. As an actress, you go through a lot of emotions. And how do you preserve your energy while still being authentic with these emotions?
Yeah, that's so real. I'm such a feeler. In case you can't tell, I've said it another day. I'm such a feeler. And one of the things that I often have to do is if I, you know, have a big emotional scene, when it's done, I usually still have to cry it out because a lot of times those feelings are in your body. I remember I was shooting this breakup scene and it was so emotional and heavy. And, you know, we finished the final take and they said, you know, wrap or whatever. And I said, I'm sorry, I just have to cry it out. And just right there, I just wept it out. And they may have all thought I was, you know, certifiable, but that's okay. Who cares? Like, I just had to release those emotions. And, you know, maybe you'd feel better doing that in private, but I think a lot of those feelings that when you're playing those roles, they are going to live in your body and you have to find some sort of outlet for them. Another thing I used to do when I'd have a really big day is I'd have a little ritual where I would sort of say goodbye to the character when I left the trailer, you know, and that was just a way to sort of release it. I think in theater, I find it a little bit harder. TV has a way that feels more technical. Theater, it tends to really take over my life and live in me. So I still navigate it, but you know, I think as long as the more we do it, the more we're able to find tools for ourselves to say, okay, that's the character and this is me. That's her life and this is my life, you know.
With the family life, this job is challenging for the families on many different levels, hectic schedules, or what we just discussed, emotions that you go through and romantic emotions that you have to go through. So what did you find worked for you to find the proper balance?
You know, I was so madly in love with acting. And I always say that it was the longest relationship I've ever had. It it used to be. And at times a very unhealthy relationship, so out of balance that it really was all consuming. It was my whole life. I didn't really do much for joy. Like that's how, it was my everything. And one of the things therapy taught me was to enjoy my life, to live a full life. And it was a really big lesson for me, and in many ways made me a better actor, because what I started doing was enjoying the in-betweens, enjoying connection, and just living, right? Just life. And so the gift that gave me was then when I was shooting I Feel Bad, and I was there from 5 in the morning to, 8 at night. And then, on Saturdays there until 2 in the morning and all that kind of stuff. I made my family life a priority still. And it was exhausting. I mean, sometimes that's a slice of life. Sometimes that's my husband and I saying, we have an hour, let's take this hour, to just connect and be present with each other. And sometimes that's, it's me going off for work and my husband coming and meeting at me there for a weekend, and we get to enjoy a couple days together or whatever it is. I mean, I think it really varies, and it's even harder if you have kids, which again, we don't have children, but we find ways to make the connection a priority. And as far as like romantic scenes and stuff, because we have that trust and that transparency and making connection a priority, those scenes aren't really an issue. Those are scenes. That's part of my job. They're very technical, frankly. It's really not, it's not an issue, and I think that's something that is really important too. It was a big lesson for me, was to learn how to make the rest of my life as meaningful as acting.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, because many going towards that dream do get lost in the process. And
it's really submersive and immersive. It sort of takes over. And
Absolutely. Of course, a big challenge in this industry is for the actors of color and immigrant actors. You're familiar with that challenge on many levels. And what would be your guidance for those who are coming from such backgrounds in finding the roles, in not being typecast as only a certain type, and being able to play a variety of great films and TV shows that they really relate to? So what is your guidance for the underrepresented communities in film?
How much time do we have?
Please, share.
A quick book. So for starters, it's, first of all, I just want to say to anyone who is underrepresented in this industry, I see you, I feel you. It is hard. It's not impossible. It is hard. I think some of the ways that you can help yourself in this industry really come back to your support network, you strengthening your point of view, your wants, your aspirations, because ultimately, when I first began in the industry, there were not even a handful of South Asians, on TV and in films. And I'm talking about in America, of course, not in India. Just to clarify. So, and people would say things to me like, have you ever thought about going to Bollywood? And I thought, well, I live here. I no, and I think, look, I always dreamed really big for myself. And there were a lot of people who thought I was delusional, is the best way I can put it. Just delusional to think any of these. I mean, the number of times people tried to have sort of these, let's be real conversations with me. Like, come on, even when I booked I Feel Bad, I wasn't, no one saw that coming. I wouldn't even say I was repped as though that was coming, right? No one saw that I was going to be a lead of something. In fact, I tested opposite 3 white women for that role. And NBC, I hate to say this phrase, they took the risk, right? They didn't say that, but I'm just saying that's how the industry sees it. It's a risk. So the reason I point that out is because what got me there was believing in myself more than anyone else did. Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean I didn't have days where I was crumpled on the floor going, I can't do this anymore. Of course, I'm human. There were so many times I've thought about quitting, you know, but I knew what I wanted, and I knew that I had to keep fighting. One of the things I could have done that I didn't, that would be really wise for any of you who can, is create your own content. If you can create, if you can show them yourself, you will pave opportunities for yourself that they will not think to give you. I often found that overwhelming. I'm starting to get into that world now, but it was really, really big for me to try to figure that out. I think that if you can, it is always going to be empowering, because you're going to have a better vision for yourself than the outside world, ultimately. If that's not an option for you, that's okay. I get it. I mean, I think that it's a lot. People used to always say to me, why don't you just write? And I would think, I spent 15 years trying to be good at acting, and now I have to come up with a whole other skill. It's a skill. It's hard. You don't just write. You don't just go, oh, I'm just going to write something. It's big. Yeah. So, you know, it's okay. But I think the more you can find ways to support yourself, for me, therapy, friends, ways that I continue to be empowered in myself so that I could keep going, it's the key to this journey. There's nothing that's going to get you through this except for your own spirit, heart, courage, bravery. That's it. And the more you can support yourself so you have more spirit, heart, courage, bravery, the more longevity you have.
Yeah. Wow. That was empowering. Thank you. What about women in film? That's a whole separate set of struggles and challenges. So what is your guidance for women who are just getting into this industry? And what are some things they have to watch out for, and some decisions they have to make right away to be comfortable and have a smooth ride getting to their dreams?
I think, yeah, it's another layer of advocacy, right? And I think that for anyone who is marginalized and underrepresented, the number one thing I would say is you're going to need to be your own advocate. And learning how to take up space. Women in our society are so often taught to be the good girl, to stay small, to be polite, to be kind. Look, the most important thing is taking care of yourself and feeling safe. And I think if that means you just politeness went out the window, that's fine. Ultimately, that's okay. And I know that's a really scary idea to imagine when you're first starting out. But if there's an environment that doesn't feel safe and you don't feel like you can speak up in it, it's really important to find your people that will support you in speaking up. And I think the other thing I would say is, you can always say no. Yeah. I say this to all actors, any actor who is marginalized on any level. This is incredibly, incredibly important, because we are taught to take the crumbs. We are taught that you're so lucky you booked anything at all. Be grateful. To that I say, be grateful, but ask for more. And be comfortable saying no. Get comfortable saying no, because there were roles in my time that I found offensive that I just didn't want to do. And, you know, your reps often are going to say, but hello, who do you think you are as a guest star? Why wouldn't you want, you don't have any guest stars on your resume. You don't have this yet. You need this to build up tape. You're working with blah, 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 famous person, that famous person. And what I have learned is it never matters more than your own personal safety and your boundaries. And you will never regret saying no to something that you wouldn't feel good about. And you can feel it in your body. We can all feel it in our bodies when we're reading for something that feels wrong, that feels bad. that feels offensive, that feels like it's crossing any boundary that doesn't feel right for us. And, you know, people will always tell you the stories of, oh, well, this person passed on this project and then it became the hit thing and it would have made them, you know, $900 million. But the truth is, more often than not, those people are going to continue to work in some other capacity that's going to make them feel happier, more fulfilled, and live a healthier, happier life. And I think that quality of life matters more than doing something that makes you feel bad.
Thank you. That's important for the actors to hear when they're starting out, because there really is indeed a lot of pressure and you're terrified to lose that opportunity. But then down the line, it's you who you have to live with. So you're absolutely right. Thank you for bringing that.
And in my experience, somehow the more you are aligned with what feels right for you, the more good things will happen that you want. It is, I'm not trying to sound, you know, woo-woo. I'm just saying, logistically speaking, I've seen it. I'm living proof of this. So it is okay. And trust me, I still shake every time I say no. I still shake. It is scary and the scary doesn't go away.
Yeah.
But you're going to be okay. And if you really don't want to do it, don't do it.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a very good life lesson on many different levels. Could you please share 3 key pieces of advice or lessons learned, or maybe mistakes to avoid for those who are just at the beginning of their path?
Yes, I think I think I can. Yeah, I mean, I think it would really go back to what I've been saying throughout for the first piece of advice, which is really hone listening to your gut and your body. Because ultimately, you know best what's right for you. And I think when we start to lean too much on our reps' guidance or our families or what looks right on paper or what we think we're supposed to do, it just steers us away from the path we want. And there are so many paths to being a successful actor. It is not just one journey by any stretch. I mean, my life is absolutely proof of that. And I think a lot of actors' lives are proof of that. So I think the more you can hone listening to your own intuition, the better you're going to feel about every step you have in this career. Another piece I go back to is be grateful, but ask for more. Because as an actor, I have found there is this repeated messaging of you're lucky to get anything. We're always very, very lucky to and privileged to get to live this life. Truly, it is a privilege to get to be an actor. That being said, you get to hold space for both. You get to be grateful and say, I also want to be this. I want to be in a Pixar movie. I want to do, you know, I don't know. You know, whatever, be in the circus. I don't know what that journey is, but you get to always have, and that's the balance. The being grateful is what keeps us present and happy and feeling good about the small victories or large victories that we have, which are so important. And then the asking for more is what keeps you going for more and keeps building. And then the third piece of advice I would say goes back to the other thing I've been reiterating, which is get your support network going. What does it take to strengthen your ability to advocate for yourself? For me, that was therapy. My therapist really changed my ability to take up space, ask for what I need, obviously be professional, you know, all those things. I'm not saying just sort of rant and rave, but I am saying I was able to say, no, that's not good enough, or I don't want to be treated that way, or this doesn't feel good for me. That all came by creating a support network for myself that gave me the courage to be more authentic to myself. And I think those are really important muscles to work as you know, go on this endeavor.
Yeah. Thank you. It's been a fantastic masterclass with just so much honesty and authenticity, and you just poured your soul into this masterclass. So thank you. We're truly grateful, and I'm sure the aspiring actors are really going to be able to relate to this and know how to navigate better in this, tough waters.
Yeah, it's a wild world, and I'm so happy to be able to share and impart from some of my life experiences, and I hope they're helpful.
To end this amazing masterclass, who would you like to nominate to be the next person to send the elevator back down?
I would love to nominate my girl Anika Noni Rose. She is just a brilliant, sublime, incredible human being, and I would love to nominate her.
Thank you. We'll reach out. Hopefully she has time.
Yes, she may be busy. She's got so much going on, but if she's available, I think she'd be incredible.
Hopefully we'll be able to invite her and also learn a lot from her. But thank you so much, Sarayu. It's been really a wonderful journey to go with you on. So really appreciate your time, and thank you everyone who's been watching. We wish you best of luck, and we hope to see you on big screens and major streaming platforms very soon.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.